And I'm Shanna, my husband Tyler Armstrong, and we have 3 kids, Jack, Liam, and Bree, that are slowly becoming more involved in the farm as they grow. They're 6, 8, and 10, so getting there. And so just a little bit about our farm. We purchased the farm that we own in 2010. But the sheep flock itself originates, my mom gifted us 15 ewes when we bought the farm, which my dad had passed away, and she no longer really wanted to have to do the day-to-day managing of the flock, so she gave us those sheep to start our flock. And before that, my mom's parents actually had sheep, and they were one of the first to import polled Dorsets into Canada. And then they had gifted some to my parents. So it kind of was interesting how it passed on. And I think technically we're the 4th generation, our kids the 5th as sheep farmers, but it sort of passed on the maternal side, which isn't always the case. So anyway, so that's, yeah. So as I mentioned briefly, we have primarily polled Dorset sheep. We very much focus on the lambing out of season naturally, mostly because of the markets. And we also, fall lambing is always our lambs do best then. It works really well on our operation. But yeah, having that seasonal or a-seasonal lambing where we can lamb multiple times throughout the year to have lamb available to our customers has worked well for us, and we've learned has been very important for when our markets are strongest. I should say we're in Renfrew County, so in Eastern Ontario, sort of northwest of Ottawa. And so yeah, we started this operation. We sell direct to consumer, obviously. We also sell some breeding stock, either commercial or purebred polled Dorsets. And then we also sell, so we do about like 1/3 to 1/2 of our lambs direct to consumer, and then 1/3 to the sale barn, and then a few, we obviously keep our ewe lambs for replacements, and then sell a bit to other sheep farmers as well. Early on, we quickly realized, I'm not from Renfrew County, and I knew that I wanted to sell to customers because I love that aspect of it, of educating and interacting with the public and with customers and getting that feedback and how we can improve and all that stuff. But knowing nobody in Renfrew County, realized we needed to go to farmers markets to try and build up a bit of a business on that side. My husband, on the other side, is not a big fan of the whole consumer interaction and having to talk to people that don't understand farming and all of that. He very much loves the physical work, and yeah, working on the farm. He's our fencer that's moving fence every couple days. And he's also, he took up shearing sort of out of, well, we have sheep, so I might as well learn to shear. I guess that's 10 or 12 years ago now. And it sort of word spread, and it's quickly become quite a busy side business. We both also work full-time off farm. So this is all we all manage. It needs to be very streamlined as far as labor, because it needs to happen. Like, there's no checking ewes that are lambing every 2 hours. We check them in the morning and at night, and 99% of the time the ewes have the lambs licked off and they're up and drinking, and that's how we like it. So yeah, that's basically how we've sort of developed our marketing, was based on our own personal strengths. So I really liked that interaction side and education side. My husband he's really begun to love shearing, and he really likes the physical labor side of it. So it's a very good complement for our business. So I'm just gonna go over, there's sort of 5 key items that I think are extremely important when you're trying to consider whether or not direct marketing is for you or not. Number 1, in big bold, is to know your cost of production. Above anything else, it's critical, because if you're doing all of this extra work, and there's no hiding that it's a lot more work, if you don't know your cost of production and you're doing piles more work and still not making a profit, there's really no sense in doing it. Number two is to have a clear vision. You'll often be challenged by this with customers, so it's really important to have that sort of focal point to your business. Number three is to know your market. Four is to always look at your cuts and how you can maximize those cuts, because we all know there's very limited on what's on a lamb, but it's how you can sort of transform that and make it more value add. And then finally, five, to be aware of consumer trends and priorities. So knowing your cost of production and additional costs when it comes to direct marketing. The top one, oops, is covered by my Zoom screen, but just knowing your cost on raising lambs. So overall, your cost of production. But then there's some really important factors that just sort of seem to sneak in of, oh, I'll just sell a few lambs here or there. And you don't think of that extra time, like the time that it takes to go from the butchers, from your farm to the butchers and back again, and then yet again to go pick up the ready lamb. And then if you're going to another location to say do pepperettes or sausage or something else, that all takes a lot of time, and it's really important to factor that in when you're figuring out your costs and your prices. And then there's things like holding lambs longer to meet scheduled butcher dates. So we've booked our 2023. I think this year I was a bit later, and I booked them, I think, in September for all of 2023, and I luckily got the dates I wanted. But I think we can say across the province, for the most part, it is a struggle to get to find a butcher that you like and that's willing to work with you, and also the availability. So booking those lambs, like we're booking them for the end of next year, when those ewes are not even, we haven't even thought of getting them bred yet. So as much as we try and time things, there are times where you're saying, okay, we've got a lot of lambs that are getting close to ready, but we need to stretch that out a month to meet our fall market, when things get really, really busy for us on the direct marketing side. Things like driving to your customers, or even if it's just so you're only 20 minutes away, I'll run it there. Well, that all eats away at your time. So it's very important to factor that in, or to set strict limits or on what you're willing to do, or like pick up at farm only, things like that. But just being aware of that at the beginning. And then time at markets. If you're doing farmers markets, they take time. Our favorite one now has really honed in on the fact that you don't need an all-day market to sell lots of a product. It's about getting the customers there when you're open, and it's open for 2.5 hours, and it's dropped from over the last 8 years from 4 hours to 2.5, and our sales have only increased at that market. So it's really but it is, consider that when there's a 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. market, that's a lot of a Saturday that you're using to sell lamb or sell a product. Also time dealing with customers. So they send you a message in Messenger or an email or a call, and it's always, for us anyways, the 80-20 rule. It's 20% of the customers take 80% of your time. But you do have to factor that in as well. And then things like freezers, hydro, market stall, commission if you're doing online sales, even online transactions, or like the Square reader is like just about 3% for a credit card, for a basic credit card, things like that you need to sort of look at when you're setting it all up, so it doesn't come all of a sudden and hit you, and you realize how much it's actually eaten away at your bottom line. The other thing you need to consider is, do you always want to make more than what the market price is, or more than your cost of production? So we've gone the route of, we want to always obviously make more than our cost of production, but not necessarily the market price, only because we feel getting customers sensitive to price adjustments takes a little bit. not, it's not too terrible if it doesn't go up too much at once, but if we're always adjusting, especially when you hit that like Easter spring pricing and getting $4 a pound for a live 100-pound lamb, trying to convert that and bump up our prices, and like things are labeled, and then like to us it wasn't worth it. So we know our cost of production, we make sure that all of our costs are covered and we're making a profit on that, but we don't worry too much about the market price. And times like this, it's very beneficial to have a direct route to market a number of our lambs. But then sometimes in April, we're saying, oh, why are we going to the extra work to come out at basically the same at the end of the day? So it's just a consideration. There's lots of ways to do it, but just something to be aware of. And yeah, so I just gave a quick example of like cost is $100 for slaughter for us, roughly, depending on what exactly we're getting. Sorry, for slaughter, cut and wrap. And it's $25 for the mileage. And then we have $20 for time per lamb. And that's for a whole lamb. And then obviously if we're selling at a market, we're bumping that up substantially, because I'm talking to every customer as I sell one pack of chops, as opposed to selling like $500 of one lamb all at once. So just things to be cognizant of, I guess. The next point is to have a clear vision. We didn't at the beginning, and I will say it's you get pushed, you get questioned, and so I think it's really important that everyone in your business is on the same page at the core. And it's something you want to work out. Obviously, everyone, not just the one person marketing or the one person doing one job, everybody needs to be on that same board, so you're all working towards the same goal. And it needs to be a big thing, like in any writing mission, vision, workshop type things, they'll tell you this, and it also needs to be realistic. So when you are selling to customers, they will, like I said, they'll question your practices. They'll ask why you don't do this and someone else does that. And so you need to really be firm and confident in why you're doing what you're doing. Know your market. So this one, this has just been 100% learned on the fly as we've gone. So things to consider, like a white collar versus a blue collar community. As much as you don't want to label areas, you quickly do discover that when you're selling at farmers markets, or we have anyways. What your community is built of. Is there a large ethnic community? Is there a lot of young families or retirees, cottagers? One thing that we experienced firsthand was word of mouth on a favorite cut. We had one customer, and we call them our George, who's like your ideal customer. And he went around telling everybody at the market and all of his friends and neighbors that our rack of lamb was the very best you could get anywhere. And he had it every Saturday for supper, and it was just the best thing ever. And so that was wonderful. But at the same time, we had lineups when the market started just to buy a rack of lamb, and then a lot of disappointed customers because there are 2 racks per lamb. So they quickly sell out when you've got lots of other cuts there. So just all those things to be aware of. And it'll very much impact how you're selling and how much you're selling of items to customers. So our one market, we very rarely sell more than 1 package per customer. They're on more of a limited budget, and lamb is no secret. It's a more prime priced item, especially like in all the meats. So people aren't going and typically our Canadian population doesn't eat lamb 4 nights a week. So you're not going to be selling it in huge quantities usually. That being said, we have another market, and money is less of an issue for them, and they will buy whatever they want and however much they want. So we found it's actually been really helpful to sort of marry those markets together, because they're looking for very different products, very different price points. And so when we don't have any racks at one market, the other market then fills that void, and looking for some more shoulder chops and other cuts that are in less demand at the opposite market. So it's 100%, and every town I would say will be different. And even our pricing has been based on trial and error on what's the most in demand. So I often people will ask for our prices, and I'm glad to share them. But I also say it really depends. Like our shoulder chops, for example, started much too high comparatively to the rest. So I've raised them twice, I think, in 10 years, whereas other cuts have steadily gone up just to cover our overall costs. So it's just really playing with those numbers. And I also would recommend not going to the grocery store and just copying off of that, because in our experience anyways, it wouldn't come close to covering the costs of selling direct, or not nearly as efficient as lambs sold into Canada from New Zealand by the thousands. So our price points are different as well. So always look at cuts and how to maximize them. So like I was just talking about, there will always be that cut that you can't get enough of. For us, it's the rack of lamb. And then there's always the cut that you can't give away, not quite give away, but it's shoulder chops. And so it's finding ways to play with that. And that's what I find a lot of fun, is that being creative and trying to find new ways to turn something that you can't get rid of into something that's they can't get enough of. So a big thing for us is, and the other, I guess, is seasonality. It's amazing how much it changes from one season to another. So things like leg of lamb in the summer, I can't sell it to save my life. And so a lot of our legs get cubed, and we call it cubed specifically, not stew, because it's a leaner cut than the stew we use is the shoulder or the trim. And so it's perfect for like skewers, shish kebab, that sort of thing on the barbecue. And then in the winter, we have so much demand for stew and leg of lamb. So it's the opposite. And I should have said this, in the summer, the shoulder is primarily in shoulder chops, some roasts, but primarily shoulder chops. So, and then, yeah, sausage, there's so much that you can do with the various cuts. The only thing I will add is just to be very much aware that every transformation you do adds more cost. And so if you're transforming, say, a leg into sausage, you're going to have fairly substantial cost there, unless you can justify charging more for your other cuts that aren't being transformed. But it just things to be aware of when you're pricing things out. And then be familiar with the hot cuts in a restaurant. It's amazing how, like, I've told this example many times because it just stands out so much for me. But when I want to say the first 3, maybe 4 years of doing this, we started in 2011 selling direct. I had never done shanks. I had never tried shanks. Shanks just got turned into ground lamb for us because ground was a big hit. And then all of a sudden I had these people asking for lamb shanks, and I was like, what the heck? Like, so I got some done, and then they sold out, and then it just continued, and it sort of like it spiraled. And then for a few years, I could not keep lamb shanks in stock. They were the biggest seller, and it was because Jamie Oliver had featured lamb shank dishes, and they had become this big thing in the restaurant trade but sort of all stemming from Jamie Oliver. And so I hadn't realized it at the time until I started getting asked for them. And you never know what will stick and what won't, but that's just a good example of one where it was nothing that I had never been asked for them to being our most popular cut over, I'd say, about a 2-year span. Other things to consider: brown paper versus vacuum packed. I hate having to do vacuum packed because I like the idea of brown paper and less plastic, but to be honest, I think half of our customers wouldn't buy it. We've tried it in brown paper and they just want to see, and it may be because we've got them accustomed to vacuum pack, but they 100% want to see the cuts that they're purchasing, and lamb being something that people tend to be a little less familiar with. We've found anyway that they're not confident enough to purchase in the brown paper. I'm hoping to change that, but just something to be aware of, that you don't go and do 30 lambs in one way and then realize you should have done it another way. And then, oops, sorry. Just, there we go. And then, yeah, find a good butcher and respect them and stick with them, and book spots well in advance, as I mentioned. So it's hard. Good butchers are hard to come by, and I know that a lot of them in our area are not super keen to do lamb. They'd rather just do a few beef, and it's a lot less work and more profitable. So if you find a good one, stick with them and treat them well, because you don't want to lose. That's can be a make or break if you've got a butcher that really doesn't want to do business with you. So and then so awareness of consumer trends and priorities. The consumer is obviously going to dictate what they're going to buy, so you just need to be prepared and aware so that you can answer appropriately. There's always upcoming trends and certain practices, and we're asked, I would say every market, for one of them, like free from whatever it is, free from steroids, antibiotics, what have you. It could be organic, or are they free range or factory farmed, or what are your animal welfare practices? Are they grass fed? What's your sustainability? And then the climate crisis and animal practices in relation to that. So that's become, just this year, I've found that's been a fairly hot topic, and I kind of love it because I think sheep are the answer to a lot of that. So I love getting to talk about it with customers that aren't necessarily educated on it. And then just be prepared in the event that you're attacked by an animal activist, and don't engage. And there's lots of talks by professionals on that. Touching wood, that we've never had that had to deal with that, but it's always in the back of our minds that it's a very real possibility at any point. So yeah, that's for the most part, I think. And we're big believers in not putting down how someone else does their practices, but just talking about what we do ourselves and why we feel that's important for our farm. But I don't think we're benefiting anybody by saying this way of practicing is terrible, or it hurts the environment or the animals or what have you. I think it's really good to just talk positively about your own operation, your own practices, and leave others out of it, because everybody has a reason for the way they are farming. And I think together we're enough of a minority that we need to all stick together as an overall farming community. And then so I talked a lot about markets. There's a lot of other direct to consumer possibilities, and they seem to be popping up like annually. There's a few new ways of doing it. So obviously there's the farm stand or store. We haven't really, we haven't really gone that route. We're open for customers, but by appointment only, because like I said, we work off farm and we're busy. So for us, that's what we've done. And then online stores and website. We do have a website and a bit of an online store. I still struggle with selling a product by weight on an online store. There is more and more technology out there, so I'm still anxiously waiting for the perfect answer for us. But in the meantime, we just sell by boxes, $50 and $100 boxes. And that seems to work. Although I will say for us personally, it seems to be that in your face is by far, like, I don't know, 10-fold more effective than just online. That being said, I'm not the very best person for social media. I try my best, but I'm definitely not posting every day. So I think that goes hand in hand. If you're going to go the online route, you need to have a social media presence or email presence and be in people's faces as far as on their phone or screen, so that they don't forget about you. Because as soon as we're not at a market, we find people forget about us if we're not doing those regular email check-ins. And And then there's, direct to customer delivery. There's lots of neat things happening too on even for frozen or things that products that need to stay cold, and local farms working together to ship direct to customer. I find that pretty exciting, the stuff that's happening there. There's food co-ops, there's third-party platforms. We're part of one of those where one company or group is I guess has the platform, people order, and then she comes and picks up from us and delivers. And that works well too, and takes a lot of the work out for us by just, it literally don't have to leave the farm. You put your meat out in a cooler and she picks it up and it's delivered. Restaurants, we've tried restaurants, just haven't found the ones that work well for us, but it's a possibility or an opportunity as well for people. And then local retailers as well. And then I'll just be very aware again of your cost of production. There's sometimes some more than others will push on what they want to mark up your product, and so therefore taking a certain percentage off. So you need to be confident in your numbers so you know what you can accept. And then also things to look at too is just to be aware of certain, like, I know the restaurant trade has a bit of a reputation for paying later, say 30 days later or that sort of thing. So just make sure that everything's written down in a contract and it's very clear. And things like we've had in the past with the store where they weren't selling what they thought they would, so they wanted us to buy it back, and it wasn't in writing, so it's hard who's right and who's wrong. But that's obviously, like, it's not something that we could take back and then sell again. So things like that you wouldn't necessarily think about, but it's important to consider, because you don't want to end up with calls of things that don't work for your business. So it's good to get that all cleared up front when you start working with someone. And that is it. I feel like I rolled through that really fast. So thank you very much for your attention. And then if anyone has any questions, I'm more excited to have discussion and sort of conversation back and forth. But you can also always reach me. Our email is pinnaclehaven@gmail.com, or our website, or all our contact information is there as well. So I'm always love chatting marketing and sheep farming in general. So if there's anything at all, please feel free to reach out to us. And I'm going to stop sharing. We can have a bit of a conversation maybe.
Perfect. Thank you, Shanna.
Thank you.
All right, Anita, so you and I can divide and conquer here. I don't know if you want to keep an eye on the chat box, but if anyone has any questions, feel free to raise your hand, and we'll take some live ones. And Anita, if you can keep an eye on the chat box, or let me know if you want me to, we can maybe start there if there's anything.
Yep. Okay, so we do have a question in the chat box from Kim. Shanna, she says, great presentation, thank you. What types of sustainability questions do customers tend to ask you?
Yeah, so that one is a weird one, to be honest. I find I get asked, like, what are your sustainability practices, which is such a huge question. And so I tend to go in more into, like, well, to us, sustainability means a lot of things. Like, you need to be viable and sustainable to be able to continue your operation, but we also want to leave our land better than when we got it. So we do practices like rotational grazing, and I go into the whole conversation around that. But that's that's one that it's obviously like a hot term that people are hearing, because it's usually a big question that they're asking, like overall sustainability is what I've had anyway.
So not specific questions, but sort of very broad, general.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So how do you answer them when they ask that?
Yeah, so that's exactly, I just go into, like, how they, like, that to us, like, sustainability is important. We think financial sustainability is very important because we need to be in this for the long run so our children can see a benefit in operating as well down the road. And I also think environmental sustainability is important. And then I talk about how we rotationally graze and we unroll bales in our field to improve the soil quality, and see a difference year over year on how our soil or how our fields and fertility have improved. And yeah, I just sort of go on that, but I tend to go more on the environmental sustainability because I think that's where they're thinking when they ask sustainability. But it is, yeah, it's a big question. So, and I do sort of feel like I sort of feel out the customer and where their interest is, I guess. But usually it's more on the environment side and how we're trying to improve our soils and our land.
Okay, thanks for that. Colleen has a couple of questions. One, what weight do you target for, I'm assuming carcass, but also a question with regards to labeling. What does your processor offer in terms of labeling? And are they putting weights and prices on your product, or are you having to do that yourself?
All right. So weight we target is 100 pounds live, 50 pounds, I mean, ballpark. Ideally, it's like 55 pounds, but usually it's closer to 50 dressed weight. And that's just for our sheep specifically. That's what we've deemed as sort of perfect because fat cover and all of that. If we do 115 pound lamb, there's way too much fat to be selling to our customers. But that being said, if you have a huge Suffolk flock, I'm sure you want much heavier lambs than 100 pound lambs. So for us, it's 100 pounds. And then the labeling, our processor does not offer it. So I actually took advantage of a grant that came out at the start of COVID, I believe, for farms needing to transition to online. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was a $5,000 grant. And so in that, we used it to purchase a scale, a proper scale that's also a labeler, prints a label. So it has our logo on it and everything. And yeah, I love it. But it is a bit of an investment. So if you're just selling a few lambs at a time, I wouldn't recommend. If your abattoir does it for you, then awesome. We didn't have that option. We sort of begged them to do it, and they don't have enough staff as is. So anyway, we went that route. And so yeah, they have the weights and prices because it's all figured into our labeler, so I can adjust prices easily, like right on the scale. I think I answered that all. Yes.
Okay. So following up on the labeling thing, just for those that may not be aware, in Ontario, we have labeling requirements when we're selling animals, right?
Yeah.
Can you just rhyme off what those requirements are, like what you have to have on that label?
Yeah. I kind of want to go and print a label that's sitting right beside me right now, and so I don't get it wrong, but you're testing my memory. So the one, you have to have keep frozen or keep refrigerated. In our case, we sell everything frozen. So it says keep frozen on it. You need your contact information. So we have our address and our, we have Pinnacle Haven Farm, and I believe our website. Yeah. And then our address. And this is all very small because it's on a label, but, and then you need your weight, and it's in, I think it's like 3-digit increment. Like it's like, say if it's, in pounds, like 1.21 pounds. It's not supposed to be 1.2 pounds. They're very prescriptive, and it's actually, I believe it's CFIA, but it's federal regulations that look after labeling. Yep. And then, the date, you need the date on it. And I'm missing something. Price, obviously. Yes.
And I guess, I mean, you sort of hinted to it, but when they would the in terms of the requirement for labeling with your contact information, I mean, you don't have to have your name and address and phone number on there, right?
They have to have a way to get in touch with you. So if they're
correct.
not happy,
Yeah.
so a phone number only, or an address, or an email.
Or an email. Yep.
Yeah.
Or a
yeah.
website.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some way that they can get in touch with you. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Thanks for covering that off. So Robert's question, comment is, Shanna, note from your website that you are selling individual cuts. Are you selling through the whole lamb, or what do you do with what is left over? So I guess elaborate a little bit more on your comments about what cuts sell and don't, and what do you do with the ones that don't?
Yeah, so thanks for that, Robert. I should have been more clear, I guess. So yeah, we do sell individual cuts. I should have also said, when we started into this, I thought, oh, we'll do farmers markets for a couple of years, get some contacts, and then we'll just sell them whole lambs, because that's way easier, obviously. And then I quickly learned that that doesn't work. Most people, I mean, we do have some whole lamb customers or half lamb customers, but most people have the little freezer on top of their fridge, and they want what they need for the week, maybe 2 weeks, and that's it. So hence why we are still doing farmers markets. But yeah, so with the cuts, we're selling by the cut, and that's where that creative piece comes in, like, and it's literally trial and error. I will say we never get rack of lamb other than maybe the odd time in the winter. And same with loin chops. We eat lots of shoulder chops in the summer, and we've gotten a lot better with it over the years. As far as like I was mentioning, cutting it into what our customers like, but that's really it's trial and error. And like I said, even from one market to another down the road, it can vary. So it's finding like good fits, and pricing accordingly as well. Like, there's a lot of people now that do buy shoulder chops because they're half the price of loin chops. So if you're feeding a family of 4 or 5 or 6, it quickly becomes very expensive to buy loin chops for everybody, whereas shoulder chops are more affordable. So things like that, but it's really just sort of playing around with that. And I will say, I think are doing fairly well. It's not, because it's frozen too. So we send 4 lambs every 2 weeks from the 1st of May to the 1st of November, give or take, and then have a couple of other, like a before Christmas and a before Easter group. But other than that, so that's sort of, so if I'm always aware of my inventory. And if say June 20th, I've got like tons of leg steaks left, well, then I'm not going to have any leg steaks ordered for the next, in 2 weeks time. I'm going to do, I don't know, like cubed lamb or butterflied leg or something else. So it's not to say like I'm not selling all 4 of those lambs in a 2-week period. There's sort of, it's continual inventory. Obviously we're selling the oldest first and all of that, but it's not the end of the world. If I've got extra of something, I can then sell it in 2 weeks or even 4 weeks time. So yeah, I don't know if hopefully that clarifies a little bit.
Yep. We'll probably come back to it as well with other questions. So you mentioned earlier that you have just booked your dates for 2023.
Yeah.
How far out will this will vary from processor to processor, but how far out will your processor take bookings?
I know the start of 2022, they had just started taking 2023 bookings.
Okay.
But like, if I called them now to ask for 2024, I'm not sure they would commit to it, because they've still got lots of room for like late 23 kind of thing. Every butcher will vary for sure, but and for us, it's not a bad, like, because we're there every 2 weeks. So it's like, should we be booking our dates yet? And they're like, no, we still have tons of space. But I am always nervous of like, oh, what if there's a huge influx and tons of people call? And I like to do it in sort of May, June, for the following year, because then I'm super confident there'll be all the dates we need. But it really depends on butchers. And I know like in the chicken world, it's kind of crazy in some areas where they're booking, like 2 years out.
Yeah.
So yeah, it really depends on the butcher. Yeah.
Okay. You mentioned, Shanna, that roughly a third of your lambs go through the direct market.
Yeah.
And you also mentioned, you sell through this live sales, as well as keeping back your own replacements to sell a few breeding stock. So when we look at the direct to consumer sales, just summarize the platforms, for want of a better word, that you're using. So farmers markets, how many are you going to?
This year, to be perfectly honest, we did one really good one that's only every second week, way up in Deep River, about an hour from us. And then we did Renfrew, which honestly wasn't worth our time, but it was starting up for the first after COVID. It's our local market. We had a lot of local customers, so we went. I don't know if we'll go another year because it wasn't very well attended. But in the past, that's what, prior to COVID, we had always done Renfrew and Deep River. Next year, we're still sort of looking at what we might do, but yeah, for this year, it was Deep River and Renfrew, but like probably I didn't figure it out, but at least, probably 80% of our sales were done at Deep River. So.
Okay. And you have an online store, and you've also participated in a third party sales.
Correct.
So of those three,
Yeah.
can you just give us rough percentages? Farmers markets X.
Yeah. So farmers markets roughly overall, I would say is it's really hard because it's like so dependent on the time of year, but like this year would probably be about 75% of all the lambs we sold direct. And then the online store, to be honest, is like a placeholder on our website. It's very, very minimal. A lot of people will just send an email from our website and say, hey, I'm looking for this. And there's a very distinct population that will only order things online now, especially since COVID. So we're just trying to hit those, make them feel comfortable that they can order through us, either boxes or just by contacting us. But I would say, like, I don't know, like we might get one order a month through our website. I mean, an order is not usually one pack. It's a decent order, but it's fairly insignificant in all of our sales. And then like direct, like on farm, I would say is the other, like, I don't know, 20% roughly. Yeah. But I'm realizing I didn't factor in our whole lambs. They tend to all go in the fall. So they're sort of their own thing where, like we don't sell a pile of them all year. We maybe sold like 12 to 15 whole half lambs.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Question from Kim. Other than sausages, what other value add products do you offer?
The only other thing is pepperettes, which you could consider a sausage, I guess, as well. But actually, and I guess I should give a plug to my son, Jack, my oldest, this year started his own little business. We obviously you get your organs back from your lambs, and they're not a big seller at all. And I was making a comment one day, and he said he had seen my mom buys lamb liver dog treats, and he said, well, could I make dog treats? And I said, actually, that's a great idea. So we got out the dehydrator, and he did that himself. And that's his own little side business for dog treats, but it's amazing how popular that's become. So it's really neat, the different things that you can come up with. But as far as like human consumption, we just do, the sausages and the pepperettes. And those we're less afraid to do older, like if there's a 2-year-old ewe that needs culled or something. with the seasoning in that, we find and lamb is a really nice meat for sausage, because like with beef, they usually have to add pork, but with the lamb, they don't. It's just pure lamb. So then you get, we have a lot of customers, ethnic customers that will not eat pork. So that's a nice option for them. And it's fun too. Like I love playing with the flavors. Our biggest one is rosemary garlic. It's a big hit, and honey garlic is another one. And there's all the flavors in the world you could think of. So yeah, there's lots of option there. And we try and usually have ideally, I like to have at least 4 flavors at once, but depending on the week, we at least 2 and up to 6 flavors. So, and then yeah, pepperettes is a big seller, especially in the fall.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Another question from Kim. So we're jumping back into production now. How do you schedule your lambings?
Yeah.
And also making sure that your weights are in your ideal range for slaughter.
Yeah, so for the every 2 weeks, we are to be honest, I'd love to send like 8 lambs every 4 weeks, but our butcher doesn't want to do more than ideally 4. 6 is pushing it because he wants to save room for his beef and pork. But yeah, so that's why we do that. But it does make it nice for markets. I can see what sold really well one week, and then given our big markets every 2 weeks, adjust accordingly with the next butcher date. So yeah, the timing. So we lamb basically 4 times a year. Our main ewe flock lambs 3 times a year. But then our ewe lambs, we have it as a separate, so we kind of do a fall lambing. And to be honest, our fall lambing is dragged out because being Dorsets, we want to get as many as we can to lamb naturally out of season. So it's like October to December they're lambing. And we honestly want to get as many as we possibly can in that window, because then that's a wonderful market coming up for like sort of February, when prices start to climb all the way up to May. And that also feeds our like early season market, like our May market, and even into June if we needed. Yeah, like not all our lambs are, as much as I'd love to say they're all within like 15 pounds, there's a range. So that's where like those stragglers that don't grow as quickly, well, then they may fill that market gap where a little bit later. And so that's our one big group in the fall. And then we have another group in the winter, sort of like February. And then another group like May. And then our ewe lambs are sort of in like March, April. So we kind of have a lot of groups going there, but yeah, anyway, it's sort of, it feeds our whole market cycle. And we don't want to have a ton of ewes lambing in that like April to June kind of window, because we ideally would like to sell most of them direct in the fall when they're ready, and not have to send too many to the sale barn, because prices tend to not be great then, but especially this year. But yeah, so it's not a science. We kind of make it work as best we can. And I do like that we'll never sell everything direct, because I like saying, okay, we've got a whole pile of lambs, we're going to send a group to Greeley to our sale barn. And same thing with, yeah, having that option for a large group in that Easter window works really, really well too.
Awesome. Question from Rod. Rod is lambing, or his production system is in confinement barns with very little pasture. Should I even bother trying markets? I'm assuming he's referring to farmers markets. Or will the question concerning pasture grass fed be a problem? It depends on where Rod is from too, right?
Pardon?
I said it may depend what part of the province Rod is farming in. So if you could put that in, Rod, that'd be great.
Yeah, for sure. And to be honest, I am a big believer in education, and like people hear these terrible terms like factory farming, which I do not use to our customers, but get asked it a lot. And like, I think it's really about education and explaining to them why you do it that way and the benefits on your farm and how you can like see you that's might be sick, you see her right then and there and you're able to look after her, or like just explaining the reasoning behind things, I think is super valuable. And it's not like every customer cares that things are grass fed, and our fall lambs may be grass fed, but our early lambs certainly are not. And I explained to them that we can't raise lambs and have them available in May at a farmer's market without grain, us personally on our farm, so they get grain. And people who are fine with that for the most part, and if they're not, then they'll either go somewhere else or they'll get some lamb in the fall when I can say, okay, it's been grass fed. But yeah, I like, to be honest, I'm a big believer in education and just explaining where your stand is on it.
Yeah. And I guess a comment, you know, there are some very significant regional differences in terms of definitions, and what we call grass-fed here, like most people think of it as being on pasture, but in Europe, you know, grass-fed includes stored forages, right? So it's I always find it intriguing and interesting how our definitions sort of trip us up, right? So, you know, pasture raised versus grass fed to me are two very different things. And yeah, Colleen commented, hay is still grass fed and bang on, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Really
and that's, sorry, I should have, because absolutely, I just, us personally, we can't get lambs to 100 pounds in the time we would like on hay only, on our quality of hay. 100% there's people that can do it. And but yes, very, very accurate on that for grass fed.
Yeah. So Rod's second question, Shanna, is how often do you get asked if your product is halal? And do you have the option of offering halal?
So don't get asked too often, especially not at markets. We will get calls some on halal. And we will sell halal, but our butcher is not halal. So we will, they can order lamb and pick it up at an abattoir that's not too far from us. They're generally fairly easy to book times into in a reasonable, like within a month sort of thing. So yeah, we, especially certain time, like for Eid, for example, or even just throughout the year. But, yeah, so we've had a few customers where they've ordered, like they'll order 3 or 4 lambs at once. We'll do that. But as far as like our day-to-day, our lamb is not certified halal. But that's, again, where we are, it's not we don't have a huge demand for that. It tends to be people from Ottawa seeking lamb and come as far as us. So yeah.
Okay. I jotted a whole bunch of comments down while you were chatting. You talked about the importance of tracking consumer trends. So how do you track consumer trends for your marketing plan?
So honestly, my best one is at the farmer's market when I'm getting specific questions on things. But that being said, I do try and follow things like, even like blogs or like top chefs, see what they're up to. It's amazing how like Pinterest, things like that, you can learn a lot on what people are seeking through platforms like that. And Facebook, same thing. But yeah, so I wouldn't call myself an expert by any means. And it tends to be a lot of what customers are asking for. And so then I'm seeking where that's coming from and why, just out of curiosity. But I do try and be on top of things. And it's also good. And gives you ideas on new ways of marketing the same product. Like the one, I guess I didn't discuss, but a butterflied leg of lamb, and how it's just like a deboned leg. I had never done it, I think, before maybe 2 years ago. And then I actually found a recipe. It was Martha Stewart, and I thought, oh, I'll try this. And I did it myself, debone the leg, and it's my new favorite cut of lamb. And so really started pushing that, and I've seen it more and more too around, and in social media and that sort of thing. So I try and sort of learn, but I'm not an expert by any means on it's sort of if I fumble across something and happen to see it, but yeah.
So following on that, you made the comment about chefs that feature something makes it the next most popular cut that your customers are asking for. So is there an opportunity there for, I'm going to say, OSF to get feedback from folks like you who are marketing and direct to consumer and are I'm not going to say struggling, but that, there's certain cuts this year are slow moving. So do we reach out? You tell us what those cuts are. We reach out to a celebrity chef and have them do a promo on, I don't know, lamb neck slices or whatever.
Yeah.
To get some things moving along, because I mean, really, the consumer is king, are they not, in this?
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's an amazing idea. I love that, because there's always cuts that are not going to be as popular as one as another. And I think, the opportunity to collaborate with chefs, and doesn't even have to be super famous chef, but even just doing up like a promo video, and like our little farm did a video, and like the amount of reach that thing had is unbelievable. It's amazing what you can do with just cross promotion. And so I think working even like influencers, and there's that whole thing now, like I think there is definitely lots of opportunity there to work with and collaborate with the preparing side, I guess, like the cook chef side. So great idea, Anita.
So
and I guess on that, I would say, and at the same time, OSF could take the opportunity to then take pictures and do the recipes up on recipe cards, because I have customers asking for new recipe cards.
Okay. And so there's triggers two questions, right? One is what cuts, and I mean, I think we all recognize that this will change by season, but what cuts are slow moving in 2022?
What cuts are
For
slow
you
moving?
guys? Yeah.
For us, I'm trying to think. We have a lot of this summer is always a struggle with legs. So that's this butterflied leg, but to be honest, the price point on like the butterflied leg, well, it's the same as a whole leg, but people struggle to pay for that kind of money for one piece of meat, even if it'll feed sort of 8 to 10 people. So legs, I would say, would be probably our number one this year. That we had more of. And there's some things like because ground lamb is another one that I sell so much of. I could have easily turned it into ground, but I can't justify it because of the price point difference. Like I'd have to charge far too much for ground lamb. So I'd rather struggle a bit with the legs and come up with new ways and try and push them a little bit more to get people to try the butterflied leg or cubed. But
you mentioned OSF perhaps doing more recipe cards. Can you just describe, so I'm going to be specific with your farmers market consumer. Can you give us a profile of and I know there's not an average, but age profile, sort of income level, Do they want convenience over what's the opposite of
Yeah, non-convenient. I know what you mean.
you know, the experience and the ambiance of, you know, roasting or barbecuing a big chunk of lamb?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's funny because I just attended a marketing workshop like in October, and it was all about like a big part of it was developing a marketing plan, but a big part of it was finding your George. And that's where I used that term earlier, is basically like your ideal customer. And the theory was that it was a pub or something called 100 Georges. And they said, well, why is it called that? And it's because all you need is 100 Georges to come into your pub, as opposed to having 1,000 regular customers and trying to draw in 1,000 regular customers. You want that core customer that's looking for exactly what you're producing. And so it was figuring out who that customer was. And for us, it was funny because it made me reflect. And I always said it tended to be like retirement or like early retire, not pre-retirement couples, I guess, where money isn't quite as much of an object, tended to be that sort of customer was our main, our one that came back time and time and bought. But then the more I thought about it, I realized, wow, I thought of 3 perfect examples, and they were all men, which is very rare for like grocery, any sort of food purchasing. And they were all from about 55 to 70 years old. And I thought that's so strange because that's the last thing I would have thought of. But that's what it was. That being said, we do have a lot of sort of couples, or even, and with lamb, because it is an acquired taste, some people love it and some don't. We'll have a lot of individuals where like, oh, I'm going to buy this, but my wife won't cook it. I have to cook it for myself. Or I'm going to buy it and my husband, I'll have to make something else for my husband. And they love it enough that they're okay to do that. So it's very much not on the convenience level. But then on the other side, and I would say this is where it's more young families, we get a lot of that we sell a pile of sausage, and that's 100% what it is. It's convenience. It's not too expensive. It's like $15 for 5 sausages roughly. And it's, yeah, so I think the sausage really feeds that need, or fills that need of our customer base. But all in all, I would say people tend to not be too concerned about the convenience side. And I'm sure we've driven some away because we weren't convenient enough. So that's perhaps an opportunity for someone too. But as far as, yeah, our sales, I would say are less focused on convenience and more on enjoying, like the foodie types that really want to enjoy that savor, that special meal kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Other questions, folks? We're watching the chat box there. Does your butcher do the sausage? How do you get those made?
Short answer, yes.
To that, Shanna, too, about you mentioned you're doing pepperettes as well. And is your butcher doing those, or are you having that done elsewhere?
Yeah, so very luckily our butcher is doing both of those. So that's a huge factor in us doing them. Like I know of some that will then, like from our area, that will pick up their meat and then drive to downtown Ottawa to a prime butcher to get it turned into other products, and which is like an hour drive for context. And for us, we just don't have the time to do that. And so it works out very wonderfully. I'll say that our butcher does do sausage and pepperettes, and yeah.
And following up on that is wanting to know who your butcher is.
Oh, I guess since I've booked 2023, I can say. They're called Reiki Meat Products. So they're out of, I think the address is Pembroke, but they're in like the backwoods of Renfrew County, basically. Yeah.
Okay. Do you leave ram lambs intact? Is this influenced by the target market you're selling to from Dennis?
So yes, we do, but only because they're not very old. Like we target a perfect world, they're 100 days, 100 pounds, but to be honest, they're usually more like 4 months. But they're not old enough, so they're left intact. And so it's not influenced by our target market, but it's a nice, it works out well for the ethnic market that is looking for that, because it's we do it either way. So yeah, works out well.
Okay. Last call for questions, folks. I could keep asking, but
And let's try and end with a live one.
we want to share. Yes, yes, please. Okay. So Shanna, it's going to be Anita.
Sounds good.
Cost of production. You emphasized how important it is to know your cost of production.
Yeah.
And you also commented that you're pricing your lambs direct to consumer such that you're recognizing that there's certain times of the year where you could have sold them perhaps for more into a different market. Do you, and I don't know how comfortable you are with providing a lot of details, and so I'm not going to ask for specific details, but how do you price your lamb based on your cost of production? Like, do you add a percentage over top of what your cost is? And also recognizing that you made the comment that consumers are sensitive to price changes. So, do you set your price for the whole year? Do you set them every 3 months, every 6 months? Just describe how you come up with your prices.
Okay, yeah, good question. So we know our cost of production, and then we base on, it tends to be a set number I just do that I add on top as like the profit after we've taken into consideration all the time that we've put into it as well. And oh shoot, I forget the second part of your question.
Just, do you use a set percent over top of your cost, or how do you come up with your price?
Okay, yeah, right, and the other part was if we adjust often.
Yes.
So yeah, we don't do a percent, we tend to just do a set dollar figure that I feel is fair for the customer and for us, for as far as like having as far as profit goes after we've considered all of our costs. And then as far as adjusting price, perfect world, I like to try and keep the prices the same for the year. And I always do a big change for the new year, because we don't sell a lot like up to Christmas, and then it's very dead until sort of Easter. So it's a good opportunity to do that. But I do find that the like when, like, say feed prices go way up, well then we will adjust if we need, or like if our butcher, we've been trying to work with our butcher to get them to do like annual increase, and obviously they can have unforeseen costs as well. But it's not nice to get all of a sudden you get this bill back and it's way more than you expected. So we try and ask them to give us a heads up as much as possible as well. And yeah, so perfect world, we adjust once a year, but we have, like this year, for example, and feed prices were quite a bit higher. We adjusted again in like sort of, I forget exactly, I want to say around June. So yeah, I think that answers everything.
Yep, no, that's good. Kim's question, how many lambs do you have processed per year, ballpark?
Ballpark like 60 to 70. So it's not like huge volumes. It's yeah.
And your processor, correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't really want to slaughter more than 4 at a time?
Yeah, I mean, they will do 6, but they won't do 6 every 2 weeks, which
Right.
is They'll, yeah, so,
Beef is their biggie, eh? And pork.
yeah, and they say they don't make money on lambs, so I can't push them too hard because I don't want them to up the prices too much either, so.
Yeah.
Anyway,
All right, folks. I don't see any raised hands. And I don't see any more questions in the chat box. So Tom.
Well, thank you, Anita, and thank you, Shanna, for the presentation tonight. Also, everyone for joining us. This